Hello there students, it's Mr. V. Today we're going to look at a cartoon coloring method using Adobe Photoshop. This is for my visual communications class for students who are learning to use the computers just for the first time. It's more about the technical side and learning how to control the medium of Adobe Photoshop to achieve a specific effect. I choose the cartoony method because it's the easiest to learn to control the colors and to get used to the interface of Photoshop. So some characteristics of this cartoony method are pretty obvious. You've got very hard-edged color values. You don't really have any strokes visible at all, and you've got really specific crispness to everything. So to do this, we're going to utilize several tools. We're going to use our lasso tool to control the edges and make selections. We're going to use our brush tool in order to paint our colors down. And for our brush, we're going to use a hard-edged, pressure-free brush. So this big, fat one. Set your spacing for your hard-edged brush down to 10%. If we have it any higher, you're going to get a really bumpy stroke that doesn't do what you tell it to do. Now this goes for your eraser tool. We're going to use a hard-edged eraser using a hard-edged, pressure-free brush. You can draw traditionally on paper, you can draw on the computer, it ultimately doesn't matter. But these are some traditional drawings that I scanned in. So I'm going to take this guy, this Saiyan floof, and I'm going to use the marquee tool, draw a box around him, and go to Edit, Copy. I'm going to open up and go to File, New, and I'm going to create a brand new canvas. I'm going to set that to 8.5 by 11. That's just your normal printer paper size. And make sure your resolution is at 300 and that you're in color. Number one step I say for beginners is to choose a comfortable mid-tone gray and then paint bucket that onto the background. This is where your paint bucket tool is located, right under the eraser. What this does is it removes eye strain, makes it easier for you to look at the screen, and it gives you a middle value range so that when you apply color, you can see the lights and the darks a lot more effectively. Next, we paste in our copied portion of our line art, and that's made a brand new layer over here. Using the Free Transform tool, that keyboard shortcut is Command T, or just go to Edit, Free Transform, you can scale up the size of your piece. Depending on your version of Photoshop, when you scale it, it might distort the image. We don't want that. So you might have to hold down Shift to constrain the proportions. First, we want to get rid of the white, and we want to make the line art see-through. We're actually going to be adding the color in a layer underneath the line art. So first, I'm going to click right here at what's called a layer blending mode. There's a lot of them. We're going to select Multiply, and it only allows the dark pixels to show. Anything that's light disappears. And then what we're going to do is lock that layer. That way we don't accidentally paint on top of it or erase any part of our line art. I'm going to make a brand new layer. I'm going to put it underneath the line art and on top of our background gray. I'm going to name it Flats. Color flats are solid colors that block in the overall shape of what you're trying to paint. It's one of the ways we control working within the boundaries of what we have. And using a big, fat brush with no pressure sensitivity on it, I'm going to just blap in the color of the overall silhouette of this form. Now I don't have to stay with yellow. As a matter of fact, with Photoshop, you can actually tell the computer to change this color. So the color doesn't really matter. I just want to get an overall silhouette of this shape. Notice there's lots of little triangular bumpy bits, and I'm drawing outside the lines quite a bit. That's okay. We're going to clean that up in just a moment. This is a pretty complicated form. There's a number of ways that you can clean this up. I mean, we could use the lasso tool and draw along the contours and then just hit delete. But if you're developing your motor skill, it might end up looking pretty sloppy like this. So here's a trick that I teach my beginners using the brush. Don't get really zoomed in, and don't use teeny tiny brushes and go down to the pixel, all right? Use a big brush. I'm going to stay slightly zoomed out. I want to get rid of this big chunk of color, and I don't want to lose this area inside the form. So with a big brush, I'm just going to brush away where the color is right up against it. And oh no, you see I've cut into this area. Hit the letter B for brush on your keyboard and just add a blob of color. And we can take away and just add the color to this edge, and easy peasy. Let's take away that little sliver and then add the color to fill in that space a little bit. Protect that edge, and oh no, look, I just deleted all this color right here. Well, and just add it back, and look, I filled it back in, but we've got more color to deal with, so then just erase it away. It's a very fast and efficient way to work. Protect one side, paint in the color on the edge that you want to preserve. Protect one edge, and then paint the color that you want to preserve. Protect one edge, and then paint back in. Erase, and paint, and erase, and paint. And if you get into these tiny little areas, naturally you're going to have to use a little bit of a smaller eraser, but the same process applies. Erase, paint. Erase, paint. Okay, so now I've got the silhouette right up along the edge of my contours. It's in its own little layer right here. So the first thing to do is, with your flats layer selected, is to click on this little guy. It's called Lock Transparent Pixels. That means that any pixels that have no information on them on this layer will be locked. And watch what happens if I choose a different color, like blue, and just start blapping color down. It keeps it within the positive pixels, not the transparent negative ones. So that allows me to work within the lines of my silhouette. Now what that does not allow me to do is to work within the lines inside of the image. So to achieve this, we're going to be using the lasso tool and a very similar method that we saw earlier. So I'm still on the flats layer. Let's add the whites of the eyes. Again, let's avoid those beginner mistakes. Use a big chunky brush and really bring it right up to the edges of those contours. And if you make a mistake, just grab the original color. Now the way I did this is, using the brush tool, I held down Alt, and that creates the color picker. And if you click on the image, it lets you grab whatever color you want to paint with. It's a great way to shift colors without coming over here to manually change them. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to have to shrink my brush a little bit to make it fit inside this area. So, oh no, I went outside my line, so that's okay. Just grab the white, and then go and grab your green again. Oh no, I went outside the lines again. That's all right, just finish the iris, grab the yellow, and clean that up. Digital has so many cool tricks over traditional, but nothing beats having a good traditional background before approaching digital. Now, once you start having multiple colors laid down, you're going to end up in this position. You'll want to lay down a lot of color down here, which is cool, but then you want to like try to negotiate and move around these areas. Well, here's a quick solution for you. We're going to look at what are called selections. So a selection means that using the lasso tool or any other tool, it creates these marching ants, and you can then draw inside of that selection. What I'm going to do is I'm going to tell the computer to select only this big yellow space, and to do that I'm going to use the magic wand tool located here under the lasso tool. So using the magic wand, I'm going to click on the yellow. You see there's all these marching ants all over the place? Well, it's not going to let me paint inside all that white that I did. So I'm going to apply the color to the entirety of the image here. All right, that about does it. So I don't want to paint on top of the flats anymore. I've got the eyes, I got all the major forms that we need. So I'm going to uncheck Lock Transparent Pixels, and I'm going to check on Lock. So the layer is fully locked. That way I don't accidentally paint on it. So now I'm going to start to add shadow and light. And in a new layer, I'm just going to call this one lighting. So color flats help you work within controlled boundaries of color in the image. So let's say you want shadows on the whites of the eyes. Well, I'm going to click on the flats layer, which is locked. All right. I'm going to use the magic wand tool and then select the color white. Now going back to my lighting layer, I could use a soft edge kind of an airbrush and get kind of a light blue. And even with a big honkin' brush, start to add definition into this area. And it won't spill outside of the white and get all over my flats. So I'm using controlled selections and working within those areas. Now let's do some shadow under these big, huge pectorals that this dude has. So I'm going to start drawing with the lasso tool. This is called lassoing. The way this works is you look at a shadow shape, and I'm going to have a shadow shape right about here. And I'm just going to find the outside edge of it and then define the top edge using the shape of what fur would look like. Now you can do it one at a time, or you can add to your selection by holding down Shift, and then I'm just going to release Shift here, and now it's going to continue letting me draw on this area. With these fluffy creatures, I don't really follow right up along the edges of the contours, but now using a brush, mainly a hard edge, I'm going to select a shadow color of this teal. I might do it right about here. And so paint in the shape, and that's on its own new layer. And so if I feel that's a little bit too heavy of a color, I can just step backwards and then try a lighter color of it. Now there are many different ways to work. Right now I'm working in such a way where I'm trying to minimize the amount of layers because you're beginners. But if you wanted to, you could create a new layer, put your color down, and then edit everything on that layer. Like if I want to make it a little bit lighter, turn the opacity down, and then just merge this with your lighting layer, right? So you make a change, and then you just merge down. So let's say we're going to add another shadow shape. I'll just make a brand new layer. Let's do like the little shadow underneath his mouth. And oh no, I just covered up the lips. Well, don't worry, it's on its own layer. And before I do anything, let's just merge down. Here's again where color flats really shine. I'm going to use my magic wand. Select the color flats layer. Select that cute little lip. Go back to that layer where the light's at and just hit delete. And I've just deleted that entire section. Let's try it again. I'm going to make a new layer, and let's add some shadow underneath this guy's eyebrows. So we're going to have a shadow shape right here. And oh no, I just spilled out into the eye area. Well, that's okay. Add your shadow like normal. Merge it down, and then go to your color flats layer. Click on the iris. And then go to your light layer with your lighting and just hit delete. Delete that part out of it. Let's get rid of the paint from the white. Click on the iris, go back to your lighting layer, hit delete. Let's get rid of the paint from the highlight. Go to your color flats, magic wand the highlight, back to your color layer, delete. Really helpful. All right, so let's say we're adding shadow and the underside of this figure is going to be shaded. And so I'm adding a shadow shape, right? And then, oh no, I lasso outside of the form. Well, that's okay. Who cares about trying to lasso with all these tiny little hair triangles? Just get in there with the overall general interior shape of the shadow form that you need, right? Do that in a new layer. Paint your value. And now here's another reason why the color flats really shine. So on my flats layer, we're going to do some inverted thinking here, everybody. I'm going to select everything inside the flats layer by holding Command and clicking directly on the little thumbnail picture. Boop. So what it's done is it's selected everything. And you can see the marching ants right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back up to this layer where I've just spilled outside of the shape, and I'm going to select the inverse. I want to tell the computer, hey, I want you to take this selection that I made and flip it. We want everything on the outside to be selected. And all you do is you go up to select, inverse, or Command, Shift, letter I. Command, Shift, I. And now, watch this. If I have my eraser out, it lets me work outside of the selection, but it won't let me touch anything on the inside. Or I can just hit delete. So I'm trimming using selections as I work. I'm not liking the hard edge of this shadow under his lip, so I'm just going to use an eraser. I'm going to use a soft-edged airbrush eraser. And I'm going to turn the opacity of this eraser down. And what opacity is, let's move the screen a little bit. Right here, these controls, right? Opacity makes the brush see-through. So if I bump it down to say like 60%, and then I go to erase, see how there's still some color left? Well, it allows you to build up and fade colors out using low opacity. So using, again, a soft-edged eraser, you can control the opacity using the 1 and 0 keys. So 0 would be 100, just look up here, and 5 would be 50. So at 100, it allows us to fade this out. A bit too hard of an edge for me, so I'm going to try and do 80 and start to feather a little bit. All right, so I've advanced a ways working on this a little bit. Some of the differences, you'll notice there are lights, middles, and darks. Those are just light, middle, and dark value shapes that use the exact same method. You just create a brand new layer, and on that layer you draw that shape using your lasso tool, and then manipulate them using a soft edge or hard edge brush, and then just merge down. But one of the things I want to look at here is notice how his face is lighter and he's got some darker soft edge transitions happening here. How did that happen? Well, these are fun little effects, and one of the ways we do this is by exploiting, again, layers. We treat this like a pizza, and so let's just turn off the lighting, and I'm going to rebuild it here so you can see how it works. So I just created a brand new layer on top of the color flats and underneath all of the shadow shapes. And using a soft-edged brush, so I'm just going to select it with the magic wand. Make sure you click back on that new layer, and then let's add some of that light. And that's happening underneath all of those layers and shadow shapes. And then what we do is we just start layering on top of it. You treat it kind of like a pizza. Click on the body color, and then click on your new layer. Now let's start to add some shadow. So again, having that brush turned way down, and it's a very fat brush. I'm going to lift and then apply one more time, and all of that color is going to start to stack on top of each other. But you see, right like that, we've added a nice layer of contrast to it. So now he's got teal with some shadow. And then if we add our shadow shapes that we've made on top of it, it creates a nice pizza full of value variations. I'm going to go to my new lighting layer. I'm going to sample the green using my brush. And let's add some yellowish. Let's warm it up a little bit down near the base. And I'm just going to add some lightness down here. And let's add some dark up on the top. So I'm going to again go sample the color green that we had. And I'm going to cool off the color. I'm going to bring it down to the dark range. And now let's add some of that dark up near the top. Let's make a yellow glowy aura. And I'm just going to make a big old blob. All right? Going to make it really bold. And then I'm thinking as the power gets closer towards the middle, it's going to get whiter. So it goes, let's say, like from white to yellow. So I'm going to turn the strength of the brush down. I'm just going to start to build up some light glow here. The reason I want that is because the hair is yellow and the aura is yellow. And I don't want yellow to be next to yellow. Otherwise, we might lose both of them. So this just involves some of your drawing technique. Draw the overall shape of the thing, and then we're carving away, so I'm going to loop on the outside and then just hit delete. It almost mimics the shape of his fur. And then we're carving away, so loop around on the outside and delete. I'm going to do a little bit of a motion blur, so there's some special effects we can do in Photoshop. Just go to Filter, blur, motion blur, and let's kind of have it start to look like it's going upward. You can control the direction of the blur, and that's way too heavy, so I'm going to turn the effect down a little. All right, and that's just giving it kind of softer edges. And you can see by stacking different layers on top of each other, you can get some pretty fun effects. So in summary, line art is on the top, lighting, flats, special effects that are behind it, and you might actually have some special effects that are on top of the image too. So you want to keep those separate, and we've got our background. All right, I hope you found this helpful, everybody. I look forward to seeing you in class. Take care.